Happy Friday, guys, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Dubs. I'm your host, Bill T. Well, another Friday, another podcast to get you through your workday and bring you into the weekend, man, and get out there in that garage and turn some wrenches and get your VWs on the road. Most importantly, get them on the road and make sure they're ready to hit the streets of Las Vegas October 6th and 7th for our one crazy weekend, big bash, get together, jammy jam. Give it any name you want, man. It's just a big, I like to call it a kickback. It's a big get together here at the Orleans Hotel and Casino. And it's taking place again, like I said, October 6th and 7th. Starts Friday night with the world famous strip cruise. Nothing but VWs as far as you can see on Las Vegas Boulevard. And then we come back to the hotel, kind of a meet and greet, hang out. Matter of fact, you can get there early. You get there about 3, 4 o'clock. The parking lot's already starting to fill up. People are there. Some people are even coming in Thursday nights. So the rates are super cheap at the hotel. So you might want to make just a whole weekend of it. Build you in some gambling time. And, we need our taxes paid over here. So you guys chop, get to work. It's an experience to behold. And so you show up Friday, hang out, meet and greet, kick it with everybody in the parking lot. And then around 8 o'clock, we roll out onto the strip in one massive group of Volkswagens, take over the strip, come back to the hotel. After that, it's kind of a late night hang. People park in the parking lot where they're going to park for the show in the morning, and everything's set up. So it's nice and easy. So if you want to go in the hotel, party it up, wake up around 9 or 10, your car's already parked in the parking lot. Your show stuff's already situated. And this year we're trying something new. So I've got an online show registration, which will allow you to upload pictures. In addition to uploading pictures, you put all your information there. I'll print you out a nice professional placard this year. We're going to be rolling this out in the next couple of weeks for the people that are already registered. I'm going to send you a link to get that set up. But the cool part is you're going to have a QR code, and give me some feedback. Send me a message on Instagram or on Facebook. Send me a message. Let me know what you think of this. But I thought it was a really cool concept. But there's going to be a QR code that's going to be on your car that people that are just walking through the parking lot can check out your car. They can click on the QR code and vote for your car. So I've looked at it, it's kind of a people's choice. There's always the back and forth. And George and I are going to beat this thing to death on a roundtable coming up, I'm sure, in respect to this People's Choice Award type thing, because I think it's definitely something. There'll be a separate class if you want to be judged that you'll need to enter your car. And specifically, if you want to come and battle it out for, the baddest Volkswagen at one crazy weekend. But that'll unfold as we get closer to the event, because some people just build because they want the recognition. They want to go toe to toe with some other people and see how they fare. And then we'll when we do that, we'll create a criteria specifically how those cars will be judged. But I think the People's Choice part is super cool. People just walking by can vote for your car, and it's limited to range, so you can't text the thing out to all your homies and get them to do that, because who wants to hang out with that dude anyway, right? You want, but I think it's nice to get recognition from people that are not in the hobby that like your car, and they can just click on a QR code and give your car a vote. So that will be pretty cool to do that. But I really like the fact of everybody will be pre-registered online, and you'll be able to get your placard when you show up. It's going to have a little image on there and some information about your car. No need to take a marker and fill it out. So we're trying something new this year, and hopefully it goes smooth, but I'm excited. For more information regarding One Crazy Weekend, go to letstalkdubs.com. Check it out. In addition to that, guys, I got my new merch, and I'm going to be putting it up on the website. So that should be happening today. I got a busy morning this morning as I'm cranking this podcast out for you guys, and I've just been slipping a little bit. Just published episode number 6 of my other podcast, the prison experience that I had back last year. If you guys are interested in that, it's a pretty wild experience. It's on Apple Podcasts now, but it's also on Podbean, where it's out through a bunch of different resources. If you Google search Arrested in Mexico, 58 Days in a Mexican Prison podcast, or just click the link in the description below. I don't want to take up too much more of this time, guys. You'll see the new merch hitting the website this weekend. Some pretty cool new logos. So check the website. I'll also do a post once I get it up on Instagram and Facebook, so you guys can know if you want to check out the new gear that I got. Other than that, I don't want to take up too much more this time on the podcast with just a bunch of blabbing about me. There is a car show coming up, and this is going to be Bug Out in Virginia is going on. It's going to be May 28th, and it's about 15 days away. So make sure you guys go check them out. Go to bugoutva.com to go check out the information to go register and be part of that on the East Coast. So you guys get into it and make sure you support your local car show scene. Also, for you guys on the West Coast, that same weekend is Bugorama 89. That Bugorama 89 is going to be taking place May 27th and 28th, Sacramento Raceway. Make sure you guys go check that out. That's my friend Steve Holt up there puts that event on Sacramento. So it's a great event, and I'm going to try to see if I can make it to that. On today's podcast, I had the opportunity to sit with Dave Andrews. Now, if the name Dave Andrews is familiar, it's because he had a blue 67 Bug that he purchased brand new, moving from the East Coast, got transferred to an Air Force base near Riverside, and ends up meeting Darrell Vittone. Him and Darrell Vittone become really good friends, and he works with him at the race shop and helps be part of the support team as they're drag racing, also while drag racing his own car. So we get an insight to what it was like being around EMPI at that time, and then the race shop after that, and what it was like to be part of the race shop and some of the things that went on during that period in time in the VW history. So it's a great podcast. I was fortunate enough to get this one while I was in England. Dave Andrews was there, and you may recognize the car that I have in the photograph is Dave Andrews. It's a recreation of Dave Andrews' car. So we get to the detail of kind of what happened to that car, the history of that car specifically, what he was running, quarter mile times, all that good information, and really just a sense of what it was like back then in the early days of the race shop. So without any further ado, guys, let's get into it this week with Dave Andrews from the race shop history on Let's Talk Dubs.
You probably don't know that there's a new Volkswagen out that doesn't look like a Volkswagen. It's got everything that people who like the Bug like. So if you happen to see a good-looking Volkswagen, don't panic.
Okay, everybody. So on today's show, I'm still here at Volksworld 2023, and it just so happened that I ran into another Yank that's here, and you guys are all familiar with who he is, and it's Dave Andrews, who ran with some of the race shop guys and ran with Darrell Vittone, a good friend of his, and I want to welcome him to the podcast. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Good morning.
So the way that we always start the podcast is the same. What's your VW story, and how did you get into Volkswagens?
How did I get into Volkswagens? Well, I grew up back east. Was going to college. My first car was a 66 Volkswagen. I was going to West Virginia University. And one late fall morning, I rolled the car.
Oh, you rolled it.
I rolled it.
Wow.
And broke my back, 2 vertebrae. The car flipped over, was in the middle of the road, got hit by another car.
Oh, wow.
And I never realized the extent of what was going on. All I knew was I could smell, it was foggy, I could smell hot oil. The back window was gone. The battery was hanging by its cables. And I crawled out of the car and was gathering up my school books because I was going to school. Needless to say, the ambulance showed up and they said, how you feel? I said, I got to get to school. I had a test or something that morning. And they said, well, we should go to the hospital, I think. I got in the front seat of the ambulance.
Really?
Yes. And rode to the hospital in the ambulance. And after a couple hours of x-rays and stuff, I asked, well, I got to get out of here. When am I leaving? She said, you'll be here for a little while.
Yeah.
And that's when they said, you've got 2 vertebrae that are cracked, and, we're going to have to deal with that. So that's what happened.
So that's your Volkswagen story.
That's my first one. And the other thing was coming from a small coal mining community back in those days, the 60s, 70s. Nobody drove foreign cars. You were really, and I really don't know where I got the bug to get a Bug. But, everybody, all my friends had Pontiac GTOs with tri-power and Chevys and with big engines. And I've got a Volkswagen.
Yeah.
But, as soon as you got the Volkswagen, you got the EMPI catalog.
Yeah.
And thumbed through it. And
so did you know about EMPI before you moved out west?
Yes.
And what caused What causes you to move out west?
Air Force.
So you joined the Air Force.
I was transferred.
Oh, really?
That was after college.
Mm-hmm.
I went into the Air Force and got a new bug. The 66 wasn't good anymore.
Yeah.
It was kind of messed up. So that's when I got the 67. And still, Volkswagens weren't popular back east. It was amazing. The dealership was 12 miles from my house. And no foreign cars. To see a foreign car driving on roads back then was so rare.
Yeah, you're over there in coal mining town, and it's as American as it gets.
Yeah, it's very American.
And don't you drive nothing foreign, because that's taken away from American union workers and all that kind of stuff. And
that's very unionized.
Yeah,
very unionized. So
and you don't know what drew you to a Volkswagen?
I honestly don't remember. There was just something about it, or maybe I read material ads that drew me to it. And so after I ended up driving, when you're in the service, I went to Lackland Air Force Base. Mm-hmm. No vehicles allowed at Lackland. So the car stayed in Pennsylvania till after basic training. And that was probably 6 or 8 weeks. Then you got to sign up for your tech school. I got into ground radio electronics, was ground radio communications between the ground and airplanes. Mm-hmm. And the tech school for that was in Keesler, Mississippi. I think it was still Mississippi.
Yeah.
Anyway, at that point, you could have vehicles. So I drove the car
from Pennsylvania to Mississippi?
To Mississippi. And
what year is this? This is you're driving a 67 Beetle.
Yeah, it's 67. Yeah.
Oh, so it's a brand new Beetle.
It's brand new.
And have you started modding this Beetle yet or anything? Or
I don't think at that point, but...
you knew you liked Beetles, and that was kind of your thing.
Liked it.
And even in the military, that's a little different, right? You show everybody in the military's all got hot rods and...
but the military base is something I didn't know. At least back then, they might still have, they had hobby shops, they called. And it was a do-it-yourself mechanic place that you could go. You could rent lifts, services, you could change oil, they'd rent a tool. I don't even know if they'd rent them. You probably just signed them out under your number.
Right.
But that's where I started doing stuff. And I drag racing in Mississippi.
Oh, really?
And I probably have a trophy somewhere from the drag strip there.
And the bug was fairly. What kind of mods did you do to the bug? Or
I don't think there was. I don't think there was any mods at that point.
So you were just doing time.
Yes. Yeah.
Consistency, test and tune.
Yes.
Nice. And so, what brings you out to Southern California?
Well, after the tech school, I went back home, mm-hmm. and. Well, before you were out of the tech school, they ask you, where do you want to go with your dream sheet? So, California. Everybody says you want to go to California. And I went, California sounds good to me. So I put it down. Now, not everybody gets their wish. And when I did this, I had no idea. I knew where California was on the map, but I had no clue where anything was. So it said March Air Force Base, Riverside, California. And I got it. I got my dream wish.
So you end up in Riverside. And at this time, Riverside, to give everybody an idea, Riverside is like the sticks.
It was comparative to right now. We're 300,000 population right now. Back then, it might have been 150 or something. But it's 60 miles from Los Angeles. So,
but there was nothing in between. There was not much in between.
Not much in between.
It was little spurses of a little ranch here and some stuff there. But it was like 2-lane road.
Yeah, there weren't to go to the beach, 2-lane roads. So it was totally different than the times we're dealing with right now. So
you get to Riverside and you got this Volkswagen, and now you're kind of in Southern California. When's the first time that you see something that's like, wait a second, these guys are really into Volkswagens here?
Well, just driving around, just my first escapade. March is up on a higher plateau than the rest of the valley. So I remember one of my, maybe the first week I was there, I started to venture out a little further. And you're still young, and you still realize you're property of the government, so you didn't want to do anything to
get yourself in trouble.
To get in trouble. And you start looking, and you start coming. There's the main road from March back into the riverside, and it has a crest on it. And you crest that point of the hill, and you look, and it's the valleys just laid out in front of you. I mean, you couldn't believe how beautiful it was. It was just spectacular. So that was kind of
you coming into a new world right there.
So different than what I was used to.
Right. I mean, it's sunshine all the time. It's nice dry roads. You're not dealing with the rain, worrying about dying in a rollover because of fog or ice or black ice. So I mean, you see like a land of opportunity there. Like it's just really a new kind of world to you.
And in my ventures and stuff of just driving around and stuff, I realized I had the EMPI catalog back then. And it was at some point, I looked at the catalog and it said Riverside, California. And I said, wow, I'm where EMPI is.
Yeah.
I got to find out where they are. And I think I found out where the warehouse was, but that really didn't get me anywhere. I just saw a building. And then there was the one day that I was driving up one of the main streets between the downtown and the university, that there was an old, I'd say, automotive showroom that was on the street. And I'm driving by, and out of the corner of my eye, I caught this car in a window. And lo and behold, it was the inch pincher.
Oh, wow.
Sitting in the window of this show. So I had to stop and park, go up, put my hands against the glass and look in, and I went, yeah, that's it.
I mean, it's like a kid's first time at Toys R Us.
Yeah,
like you see that, and you're just like, this is unbelievable. I got to see all the stuff that they make, right?
Yes, and this place wasn't very big, but it had one of those. It had windows on two sides and a corridor with the door at the end.
Yeah.
Typical old type showrooms. And so I go and I look in the back, see what I could see. And Darrell was in the back. And
so this is the first time you meet Darrell?
First time I meet Darrell.
How does that go over?
Exceptionally well. I mean, he comes and opens the door, Hey,
nice guy. He's like it.
Yes, very nice. And me, a complete stranger. Yeah.
Just welcomes you on in. Now, are they closed at this time when you're there?
Yeah, but this is just this is not EMPI. I don't want to say.
It's Econo. Is this Econo Motors at the
No.
time? No, this is the race shop.
This is the EMPI that moved from the original building. This was after Dean. So it had moved to one of Joe Vittone's properties.
Okay.
And he owned this dealership that was not a dealership anymore. So that's where Darrell went to do his stuff.
So Darrell was just doing his own race stuff,
Yes.
completely separate
Yes.
from the dealership.
Yes.
Oh, wow. So you see the inch pincher in the window. He sees you out there with your face stuck to the
Yeah,
glass.
I'm going.
And he thinks like, oh, this guy, he's not. I mean, and it's kind of how it goes today, right? You meet another VW guy and you're kind of like, hey, welcome to the fold. What's up? What can I tell you about? Because I think it's one of this, it's like this band of brotherhood where you guys are both into this car that's this universal underdog. And if you like it, there's got to be something cool about you, right?
Yes, there's just some camaraderie or something between people that and almost everybody's had a Volkswagen. You know, you can't talk to too many people that have never had a Volkswagen. Well, somewhere in their life.
I say all the time on the podcast, Volkswagens are about as American as apple pie. Because in my opinion, because with the Allied forces getting Volkswagen back on track after the war, to begin with, and second, every young person that began to work on cars and really kind of, Volkswagens were so cheap and affordable, it usually ended up being somebody's first car. And some of those that were resourceful and determined and a little stubborn they stayed with Volkswagens because, you know, they'll push you out of the hobby real quick because the first time you get that shiny new car, it's going to break down or break a clutch cable or a throttle cable, and you're either going to have to fix it or you're going to sell it.
You know, and in essence, a lot of people had a bunch of old cars. The Volkswagen was my first car. You know, I had the 66 that I rolled. The 67 was a new one, and I think I still have the sticker from it.
Really?
It was, you know, $1,800 and some dollars back then, which I think relatively, you know,
really inexpensive.
Really inexpensive compared like a Chevy at that time, $3,000 to $3,500 for a Chevy. Buicks, we always had Chevys in the family. Buicks were another grand higher.
That was, you know, I have a Riviera, 65 Riviera. MSRP on that car was $49.99.
Okay.
So I mean, it's $5,000 for that car versus $2,000 for a Bug. So. Yeah. So you meet Darrell, and how does this go down? You meet Darrell, and right away you guys kind of become buddies.
Yes. I mean, Darrell either likes you or he don't like you.
Oh, really?
And you know, have to be invited in. And let me show you around. And we started conversing. And at that time, I started, you know, he basically laid out, you know, I need some help around here occasionally. You know, you want to give me a hand, you know, after we talked a little while. I said, yeah. You know,
so he sees you're expressing all kinds of interest in the VW, and he sees you're somewhat capable, a little bit handy because you got a decent job in the military doing communication, stuff like that. So you're probably, and he sees you're handy with your own car. So after you guys talking back and forth, he says, you know what, if you got time, you know, I could use a hand around here if you want to be part of this thing. I mean, which is like, it's an unbelievable thing, right? You're kind of into tinkering with your VW, and then this guy who's like the fastest Volkswagen that you know of is like, hey, you want to hang out with me and kind of tinker with these things? I mean, that's kind of a golden ticket, right? Yeah,
and it was kind of unbelievable. So at that point, you became more. I've always been on the mechanical end of things, like taking things apart and doing stuff. Mm-hmm. Early days, worked in a machine shop. Always, you know, when I talked to my dad about doing stuff on the car, a lot of the stuff he told me, he was just making up.
That's sometimes what dads do.
You know, I'd say, well, what's that? You know, he'd give me an answer, but that wasn't the answer. So, you know, I'd change the spark plugs. And in the early days, in the early cars, you'd change spark plugs every 8,000 or 10,000 miles because they were totally wore out.
Right, completely fouled.
And we had one car that always fouled out one plug in the rear. It was a V8, 283, and so
could never be the easy spark plug up front, right? Always had to be.
It was one of those hard ones.
He said, "Dave, you got small hands. Get in there."
So, so I learned that way. And
so what's the first thing you remember? The first time you show up to work at EMPI, what's that like?
It's just.
Well, where are you at? What are you guys doing? And what do they say? Hey, do this, you know? Well,
Darrell's the boss, so, you know, you're always cleaning parts and stuff. But when you start really getting into engines and stuff, you know, then I'm not afraid to do anything because I know I've got somebody there that really helped me put it back.
Right.
If I run across problems. Mm-hmm. And things just progressively, you know, you get a little bit more adventurous as you go. And you start doing stuff, you know, like on the car. Well, you know, we had an open door to EMPI at this point.
Whatever parts you need, you just go get
them. Yeah, exactly. Now, I don't actually remember. I do have old invoices. They're always blacked out for some reason. We didn't get our parts for free, but we didn't pay much for, you know. Mm-hmm. So the progression was the exhaust system. First thing you do. And then the Zenith 2-barrel, that came next.
So now do you start working on your car? Do you say like, hey, since I'm helping you,
same.
I'd like to start building my car? Because your daily driver is the one that eventually becomes your drag car?
Yes.
So that same car that you bought brand new,
it
ends up being this car that you campaigned for quite a few years, right?
Yes. Yes.
So the first thing you do is you put the extractor exhaust on there.
Yes.
So you're coming in there, you're helping him, like cleaning parts, just being his gopher. Like, hey, I'm here to learn from you.
But learn it, yes.
And then as you're learning, he's like, and we'll let you tweak on your car too if you want to be here. So,
well, back when you're young and in those days, time wasn't the element. You stayed around till midnight.
you get 2 hours of sleep and go to work the next day.
Now, the Air Force was always involved here. And in later time in the Air Force, initially I worked day shift. And then I was transferred to another site that was part of the base. Mm-hmm. But I worked night shift there. So the night shift at the Air Force was midnight to 8 in the morning.
Oh, that's trouble.
No, it's not trouble.
Well, I mean, it means you can stay up late.
So when I got off duty at the Air Force, I worked EMPI full time, from 9 to whenever.
And I mean, what would be in the course of a day what you would do there? Like you're at the EMPI's race program. Like that's what you're working in, like just before it's called the race shop, like EMPI's racing shop.
That car had just been sent over there, and Darrell was starting to do his own thing.
Which car are you talking about?
The original inch pincher.
Okay, the original inch pincher.
So at that point, we had two different shops on the same street. That was the first one. That's where I made initial contact. Mm-hmm. And then I don't know how much time went by, a couple of years or so. We moved up the street into a bigger facility that had I think we had 2 lifts, and it was just a bigger physical building, or we could do much more stuff. We had the dyno at the original building, but it moved up the street, and we had an engine room, dedicated engine room up there, and we just started.
What was it like when you pulled the motor out of your Volkswagen the first time? Were you a little nervous?
Yeah, you're always nervous.
Were you thinking like, I hope I got to drive this to work in 4 hours? What's the first thing what's the first major thing you do to your Bug? I mean, because it's got the 1500 in it.
Yeah, it's got the 1500.
So you put the exhaust on, and are you guys going to like the local track and doing test and tune and stuff like that?
I don't recall that we did. Darrell was doing some other stuff, but I just wanted a faster Bug on the street.
So was it week by week as you'd get a paycheck, you'd buy an exhaust? You'd
get a paycheck,
you'd buy the Zenith carburetor. When you're running that car the first time you're racing it, is it still a 1500 and you've just got all the bolt-ons done to it?
Might have been a 1600. Yeah, I think it was originally a 1500.
And you had the Zenith, and you had the extractor, and the distributor, which really woke it up.
The O10, the O10.
And then you just kind of go racing and see. And the first time you race that car, what do you run in the quarter mile?
Boy, you're asking. I could probably find some time slips because I don't throw anything away.
A roundabout, you think? Because you probably had to chip away at it for a while, right?
I did. Honestly, don't know.
Yeah, no big deal. So, but first time you race it, had you said back east in Pennsylvania, you were drag racing your stock Bug.
Well, this was when I went to the Air Force.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mississippi. Yeah, in Mississippi, you were drag. Yeah. So you kind of figured out this whole, okay, I'm going to show up. We're going to take this car. I got to time the lights, and then you're going for consistency, right?
Just for consistency.
Racing.
Yeah, racing the clock.
Yeah.
Not necessarily racing anybody, but
right
for the times.
So now, what's your first big race where you start going to where you're thinking like, okay, I got to be like you're a little nervous. Things are getting serious now, or paint that picture for me, or is it you're just going to support? You're going to support Darrell at a race.
I would say mainly supporting, but still having the fast street car. And then gradually the street car I'd graduate into my own, after helping in the Orange County Raceway, the OCR, which being EMPI at the time, we had the ultimate passes. We could go anywhere. We were like
free, like kings over there.
Yeah, we were like the owners of the track. We could go up in the tower, on the roof, anywhere we wanted. And that's where I was telling you earlier, my buddy Rudy.
Yeah,
he was my my pit crew.
Rudy's your buddy from the military. You met him in the Air
Yes.
Force, and then
And
he's like, "Hey, what are you doing, Dave?" You're like, "I'm going to this EMPI place. Can I go with you?" Is that kind of how it goes down?
Kind of how.
Yeah.
And he had a Volkswagen too.
Oh, did he?
Yes.
What year was his Volkswagen?
I think it was a '66.
Yeah.
And but he wasn't into the speed a lot as I was, because he was, he's the one that took the picture. I can't take my own pictures, so
Right.
he was my support team. And
So he just you guys were friends, and he was like, "Hey, I'll go hang out with you guys and just go see what you're doing."
we had the girlfriends
Yeah.
that were friends. The girlfriends were friends and went to the races, and it was just.
What was that like? I mean, you guys are going to the races, and Volkswagens are really surprising a lot of these big V8 cars at this time.
Yes.
I mean, it's kind of good, right? Because you go there like the underdogs, and you come out victorious sometimes. And
Yeah, you always go to win.
so the first time you run your car in Southern California, the setup on it is maybe built up to a 1600 with the Zenith and the extractor exhaust and some stuff like that. And then what's your process? You start to say, I'm going to start lighting up the car, or I'm ditching these stock seats. I'm putting a race seat. Like what's the order in which you did things? Do you remember?
Drove around for a while like that, but you start progressively. Once I knew I had somebody expert-wise, if I got too far past what I was doing, naturally, to go to a 1600, you split the case, and then you put the cam in, and then
And Darrell kind of showed you the ropes on all that stuff.
Exactly, yeah.
So which builds up your confidence, because you're thinking, if he told me he's done it 100 times, this is pretty easy. So.
Yeah, and the big issues are the clearances in the engines, which I still find amazing that you could have such a small amount of clearance. You're saying, sure, we don't need more room between that rod and that end of the case, or the bottom of the piston, or no.
So did you get pretty good? Because you guys would have to clearance your own case with a
die
grinder,
yes.
And just kind of grind through the humps and all that stuff. Did you guys have any, like, we've done this so many times, we've got a pattern, we mark this up to here, we mark that up to there?
Yeah, once you've done it a few times, you pretty much know how much to take off. And then you do the dry runs, and you put everything together.
And so the motors you guys are running at this time, are you running Okrasa stuff? Are you running SPG cranks? Like, what are you running? And then I hear a lot about the SPG crank. Did you guys ever run those cranks?
I ran that on the street and at the drags.
Now, the rumor I heard about the SPG, because of course that was way before my time, the rumor I heard is if you launch that thing hard and you hook up, you can twist the crank.
That was true.
So could you ever twist a SPG crank?
I don't know if I specifically did it, but after we knew that it would happen, you either pinned them or you welded them.
Mm-hmm.
And we welded our cranks where they were pressed together.
And ultimately, for those listeners that don't know, the SPG crank was a roller bearing crank that was all pressed together, similar to like a motorcycle crankshaft.
Yeah, exactly.
It's got needle bearings all the way around. And the philosophy behind that is you could go high RPMs and not worry about the crank coming apart. The downside to it, because it was pressed together, when you transfer that load, that shock load from original RPM to dumping the clutch is where really it comes apart. So if you're using that crank, those cranks are fairly popular, like Formula V racing and stuff like that, because they weren't really hard launching. Once you're up to speed, you're just moving. So what was your favorite thing to use? Did you like the Okrasa crank? Did you like the roller bearing cranks?
I like the roller bearing cranks because when we got them, they were definitely less expensive for us
than Okrasa.
No, well, we had easy access,
right?
And I don't remember myself using Okrasa.
But you like the roller bearing cranks.
I liked the roller bearings at the time.
Like today, if you were building a motor and you wanted to build a fun motor for a car, would you have a problem putting an SPG crank in it?
No. Can you find them nowadays? That I don't know.
I don't even want to tell you a story I had about getting like a brand new one in a parts haul. I had it in a crate that I took to the swap meet, and it was outside. I live in Las Vegas, and somehow it rained, and rain got inside the container, and it The crank's got spots all over it now.
It was like an egg crate, right?
Yeah.
Styrofoam.
Yeah, it was a plastic crate, and
Yeah.
you just create a lot of. Yeah, I'm upset about that because I really wanted to build a motor with an SPG crank just because I thought it's such a cool philosophy, and my other question with an SPG crank, do you have to clearance the case less because it doesn't have rod bolts?
I would say yes.
So it's a little less work on the clearancing side, which makes it go together a little bit faster.
It goes together faster, yes.
And so when do you make the jump from like the Zenith to the 48 IDAs?
When did I do that? I probably as soon as I felt I was fairly secure in what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And, the prices on things back then were so reasonable.
I mean, it's all relative. It's relative to an extent, right? Like, what were you making in the military a week?
Not much.
$100 a week, $150 a week?
But I had room and board.
So no room and board. So your $150 a week, as far as you're concerned, was fun money, right?
Yeah.
You just needed to get gas, get back to the base, and make more money to buy more parts.
And, you either went out and you partied and stuff. I didn't.
You were motorsports all the time.
I was always thinking of something turning, twisting,
So when you go, how many races, or do you recall like any major grudge races that Darrell had with people, or he'd go to a track and these one guys are always beating him? And I mean, paint me a picture the first time, because EMPI really starts out as the top dog, right? Because you got access, you manufacture all that stuff. Who's the first threat that really comes up against EMPI? Or someone that you guys said, we can't let him beat us again. He beat us last time. Like, first time you got surprised and beat by somebody.
I always thought we won all the time.
Yeah, that's your memory.
Yeah, to that extent, we were the top dogs for
a long time.
For a long time, and people were always trying to beat us. There's always mechanical failures and stuff, but you can't avoid stuff like that. And we were always, it seemed like, things happened, but we got resolved fairly fast. Like the flywheels coming off.
Right.
When you start having to wedge the...
you wedge mate the flywheels. So who came up with doing that? Did we guys do that at EMPI first?
I thought we did.
Yeah.
And
who was really the engineer behind stuff? Like if you guys started having problems, who would you guys go to at the machine shop and stuff like that?
I would say we had a guy named Roger.
Yeah.
That was he studied as an engineer, and he'd come by and
he was like, we'll put this little chamfer on here and you guys would be good to go.
And we'd
sure. And just go over some of the problems.
And if it works, great. If it don't work, we'll try something else. So
you and Darrell become pretty close?
Yes.
Like you consider him one of your best friends?
Oh, yes.
And how far do you guys, when you're on a racing circuit, when that happens, you're still in the military, how are you able to get away to go racing?
I really wasn't probably at that time, if I get my timeline right. He'd do a lot of traveling. Mm-hmm. I'd basically stay back at the shop and answer the phone and take messages. And, we didn't have cell phones back then and stuff, so it was a little different as far as communications, and stuff still had to get done.
Right.
So they went on a lot of the tours. Mm-hmm. I didn't. I went on 2 or 3 of them. Went back to Indy and Kentucky, and I've never gone to Florida, like for the Gator Nationals.
Yeah.
But
now, do you remember? Did you have any personal? When you first race your car, do you start putting? The way that your car is downstairs, that's the way it was most of the time.
Most of the time.
And what's the first lettering and stuff you do on that car?
Permanent lettering.
I mean, when you start lettering your car, that means you're serious.
Well, yeah, that's when I basically quit. And I can't remember what I replaced the car with, because I wasn't driving that on the street anymore.
Now, you've got a close ratio trans in it by now?
Oh, yeah, close ratio, solid motor mounts.
What close ratio trans? Are they just doing stock VW trans with the gears, or were they ever using Porsche 5-speeds?
Darrell used, in the inch pincher and stuff, Porsche 5-speeds. I had stock VW trans with the welded gears on,
Now, was that Porsche 5-speed pretty reliable transmission? Not a lot of problems with it?
They were expensive. I remember that.
Yeah. And he'd buy them new?
I don't think we bought them new, and he never liked when he broke them either, because they were, I would say, harder to work on than a VW box.
Yeah.
And
so he had the Porsche 5-speed, which is more like a close ratio 4-speed, and then a little stronger transmission.
Yeah. And synchros were always the issue on the Porsche boxes.
Well, what was the issue with the synchros? You just burn them out pretty quick?
Knock them out, yeah.
Now, with your car, first lettering you put on it's what?
I remember we had 2 or 3 schemes. One was the Parts Chaser, and I can't remember.
Was that the car's name, the Parts Chaser?
Yeah, for a while, it might. I don't know if it's permanent lettering or what. I had Pennsylvania Flash on there.
Oh, really?
Because it said, and Flash was PLAISH.
Right.
Which Lil was the California Flash.
Oh, really? Yeah. So you're the Pennsylvania Flash.
But the PLISH Flash. Right. So.
I like it.
And I think we did it with shoe polish. And then McPeak, he was our local pinstriper, and he could do this so well, And when your car gets lettered, you aren't driving it on the street anymore.
No, you're pretty serious. And you guys at that time, there was no need to go street racing. You guys had full access to the track. You guys did whatever you want.
Yeah, we could go to Orange County anytime we wanted to.
Really?
Yes.
Even when the track's closed, you guys get access?
I'm pretty sure that we could do that.
I mean, that's pretty good connection.
Yeah, because I know we were going in the middle of the week, We weren't waiting till weekends.
So you guys had the advantage of going there, testing and doing all kind of stuff. What do you remember being the biggest significant change in the racing program altogether, as far as a carburetor, a camshaft? What's the biggest thing that you remember? Like, wow, we got this, man. We're really going to step it up. Or what do you remember changing that really made a difference moving forward?
Well, I know we experimented with compression ratios and the rocker arms.
The ratio rockers?
The ratio rockers. And the camshaft's probably one of the biggest things.
And who was making the camshafts? Were you guys using Isky cams at the time, or you were having
Engel
cams?
Engel. Probably still have 1 or 2 of them around. And I'm trying to remember what else.
So with respect to you starting to race your car, what's the fastest you get your car up to at the time that you're racing?
Well, see, I was racing in modified street driven, and I do have time slips that a friend of mine gave me. It was 12:10 and about 110.
12 seconds?
Yes, 12-second street car.
And what was the classification for a street car?
Just that's when I drove it on the street, and we used to drive to the drag strip.
So it would have to be. I mean, it would really have to just be a registered, functioning car, and that would qualify you for street class.
I won't say it was street class, but
that was.
I was still driving it on the street at that point.
And what size was the motor when it was running 12 seconds?
Probably about a little over 2.
So it was, getting to, because when the SPG crank came out, that came out with an 82 millimeter.
Yeah.
And the biggest stroke that you guys had at the time was a 92 millimeter, the NPRs, or was it?
We didn't, I don't remember the NPRs. I remember the 88 bores.
Uh-huh.
And then we went up to the 89s and reused the 88 bores again and rebored them. But that was kind of it. And, the weekend racing in San Bernardino was just cruising over there on a weekend, and, on Highland or Baseline, and they don't have cruises anymore. That's all been banned, that type of stuff.
So you take the bug out and go cruising in the bug and kind of give somebody a little romp, let them know don't mess with the bug, because I'll hand it to you. And if you want to meet me at OCIR, I'll show you on the track type thing.
Something like that, yeah.
Nice. And when you when you get this car and you've now got it finally lettered, it now becomes this is now just a race car. What is the setup on the car at that point? Like, what's the motor, the trans? You've got the interior stripped. I mean, when you decide I'm going to make it my race car, what is the setup on it?
Engine-wise, it's whatever fit into the modified compact bracket.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't actually remember what the size of the engine was.
But once you get it full lettered and racing, what are you running?
Low 12s.
Yeah.
At,
And low 12s is crazy fast because everybody has this memory that these cars, the Chevelle SS and all these things were running super fast. Those cars were 14-second cars.
Yeah, they were, yeah.
In the quarter mile. I mean, off the showroom floor, if you could get a 14 out of it, that was flying.
Well, I remember car specs, Chevys, 0 to 60, 9.5.
Right.
I remember that number, So,
and at the time, so Lee Layton worked with EMPI for a while, right?
I honestly don't know if he worked with EMPI. We knew him.
Right.
But
he had his own drag because he was doing a supercharged motor,
yes,
and some stuff like that, and that little Scorpion,
little Scorpion dragster.
Right, and that thing was running pretty quick. But obviously, you're back down to power to weight ratio, and I think I don't know if it looked like bicycle rims on the front that they were using.
I think they were,
which is pretty crazy as fast as those things were running to run bicycle tires on the front, but. I mean, those guys are running a supercharger. They're running in a different class, obviously, because it's a complete, they start lightening up everything and trying to go the lighter, the faster, the lighter, the faster. Who's in the circle of people that you guys are racing with at the time back in those days? Like, who are the typical guys that you remember?
Yeah,
anybody?
I'm trying to remember. Oh, well, the people that we all knew that were in our group, for sure. John Preston, John Smith, and who else do we have here?
Because you guys start racing. You guys start racing in '67. You come down to the shop, but so it's a short period of time. It's 5 years until Filter Dynamics buys out EMPI. Now, you're still hanging around at that point, and then that's when Darrell starts the race shop.
Yeah, when the EMPI went away, then we moved down where the dealership was.
You remember anything about that EMPI buyout? Was it was a real good thing for his dad? Like, his dad was going to make a boatload of money and get out of the EMPI thing?